Hi! Today we're going to talk about observation and feature leads. This is some of the most fun you can have while writing a news story. Sometimes people say, well, news is all facts and it's boring, you can't be creative. Well, that's not true. It's definitely not true. And with observation and feature leads, you can be very creative. So observation. If you're going to write a good story, you need to do observation. It needs to be really good observation. Sometimes people think, well, reporting is, you ask somebody questions and you write down the answers. That's not reporting. Reporting is much more than that. So get that out of your head right now. Good writers, they paint a scene for their readers. They paint a picture. So if you can paint a picture, you're going to be doing your readers a service. And you can't paint a picture without observation. So observation is really important. So how do you observe? When you're observing, use all your senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you taste? What do you feel? And when I say feel, I don't mean what do you feel inside, what are you thinking? What I mean is, what do you feel with your fingers? What does it feel like? What does it feel like when you touch something? Is it cold? Is it hard? Is it soft? Is it sticky? That kind of stuff. So here's an example. Say you're writing a story about a baker. What are you going to do that story? Are you going to meet him in a coffee shop? Are you going to meet him in your office? No, you're going to go to where he works and watch him work. So you go to the bakery and you watch him make a cake. So what are you going to do for your readers? You're going to describe what the bakery looks like. What is it that you see? Are there sacks of flour? Is there sugar everywhere? What does he look like? What is he wearing? What does it look like when he bakes the cakes? Describe what happens. He pours flour, sugar, eggs into a bowl. He mixes it. He spreads it into a pan. It might be really interesting to see what it's like when he frosts the cakes. And describe that. Don't just say he frosts the cakes, but describe him putting the frosting on. Describe him making roses. Describe him writing the letters on the cake. Very important, what does it smell like in the bakery? I bet it smells sweet. Let your readers know that. It might be more even interesting, like let's say you weren't interviewing a baker. Let's say you were interviewing a gym coach. What does it smell like in the gym? That might be an interesting thing to include in your story. Then when you want to describe what the cake looks like when it's done. What color is it? What is on the cake? When you slice it open, what does it look like? Are there several layers? And then lastly, taste the cake. See what it tastes like so you can describe that for your readers. That's observation. That's what makes a good story. When you're describing, use rich description, what I call rich description. Use details. Be specific. Be specific. If you're covering an event, don't say there were a lot of people there. Count the people. Don't say the room was full. Tell me how many the room holds. And that's easy to find out. For instance, if you're at a basketball game, you can ask the sports information director how many the stadium holds. If you are at an event at the UC, you can ask the people who run the UC how many the venue holds. Don't be vague. Vague is bad. For instance, when you're describing the cake, don't say it's beautiful. Nobody knows. That's different for beautiful is different for everybody. So tell me what color it is. What type of frosting is it? Is it buttercream? Is it fudge? Is it whipped cream? What do the decorations look like? What's written on it? How big is it? How many layers? Don't say something's big or large. Like, for instance, if you were describing a house, you wouldn't say it's a big house. You would tell me how many rooms it has, or how many square feet it has, how many floors it has, okay? So be specific. Okay, so another way to be really creative in your story is to use feature leads. Feature leads are really fun. A feature lead is a more interesting type of lead than a summary lead. Remember, last week we learned summary leads. What's a summary lead? Think about it. What does a summary lead do? A summary lead summarizes the story with who, what, when, where, and sometimes why and how. A summary lead is easy to write, especially when you're on deadline. But a feature lead is very difficult to write. In fact, it's easy to write a bad feature lead, so be careful. Now, in a feature lead, you're not necessarily going to summarize. You might summarize, but not necessarily. It's just a more interesting way to bring the reader into the story, and it's really fun. Your story is going to be much more interesting to read if it's got a feature lead than if it has a summary lead. Now, if you're on deadline, it's going to be hard to write a feature lead. But if you have more time, a feature lead is really the way to go. Okay, so to me, there's three types of feature leads. Three types of feature leads. The first type is an anecdote. What's an anecdote? An anecdote is a short story. It's just a little story. So when you're doing your reporting, you're going to get a lot of, the person is going to tell you some stories about their life. So what you can do is you can take one of those stories and make it into your lead. So you take a story from your reporting and use it as your lead. So here's an example. Let's just say that the baker told you that when he was 8, he baked his first cake, and that's when he realized he wanted to be a baker. So you could tell that story and really tell it with description as he told it, not as a quote, but just as a story, and that would be your lead. The second type of feature lead is a scene setter. A scene setter puts the reader in the story. You describe a scene, and that puts the reader in the story. For instance, you describe what it looks like in the kitchen while he's baking a cake. You know, is there flour everywhere? What does he do? What does he look like? You describe that scene. Put the reader there. That's a scene setter. The last type of feature lead is a summary. And what you do is you summarize, but you don't use who, what, when, where. You don't use who, what, when, where. You just summarize the story. For example, you could say, Joe Smith started baking cakes when he was 8, and he's still baking cakes at 44. I mean, you could say that. You know, that's just a simple way to do it. So that summarizes, but it's not who, what, when, where. It's much more interesting. So 3 types of feature leads: anecdote, scene setter, summary. Okay, so some things to avoid when you're writing leads. Some things to avoid. If you use these types of leads, you're going to run into problems because they're really easy to do badly. So avoid these. Questions. Avoid question leads. Once in a while it works, but it's usually not that good. Avoid the imagine yourself lead. For instance, imagine yourself getting up at 5 a.m. every morning, running 3 miles, then playing basketball or something like that. Don't say that. Just tell me, like for instance, what you're going to do in this story is you're going to talk about this guy who gets up at 5 in the morning, runs 3 miles, and then plays basketball. Just tell me how he does that. Describe that. Watch him do it and describe it, instead of saying, imagine yourself doing this. Don't start your story with a direct quote. It's confusing. Please don't start your story with a direct quote. It's confusing. You can paraphrase in the lead, and then have a direct quote as your second paragraph. But don't start with a direct quote. Avoid cliches. Please avoid cliches. Cliches are overused phrases. Like for instance, it came back to bite him in the back, or Winners never quit and quitters never win, you know, something like that. Also avoid things that you hear on ESPN. For instance, you know, just any funny things that they use on there that are probably cliches. Avoid the exception to the rule lead. Like, for instance, most college students blank, but John Smith blanks. Don't do that. Just tell me what John Smith does. And then avoid fiction. Avoid made-up scenes, made-up stories. Don't make things up. Okay, never make things up in journalism. Okay? All right, so those are some leads to avoid. Questions? Imagine yourself, direct quotes, cliches, exceptions to the rule, and fiction. Okay, so after you write your feature lead, you're going to have to do a nut graph. After a feature lead, you need to do a nut graph. A nut graph summarizes the story for the reader. You have to do that after a feature lead. What you have to do is you have to tell the story, tell the reader this is what the story's about. So an example, after the feature lead on the baker, you insert a paragraph explaining what the story's about. For instance, you talked about Jones, you described him in the lead. Now you're going to say, Jones owns a downtown bakery in Greeley, which is celebrating its 10th year in business this month. That's just an example. But you want to summarize the story for the reader after the feature lead. If you describe well, I'll just leave it at that. Summarize the story for the reader after the feature lead. If you had described a basketball game, like let's say you covered a basketball game, and the lead is a scene setter that sets the scene for the last shot where UNC won, then in the paragraph below that you would just describe who was the leading scorer, or you know what the score was, and that kind of stuff. Okay, conclusion. If you use feature leads and observation properly, you can really make your story sing. In other words, you can write a great story. You can write a great story. If you want to write a story that really people enjoy reading, then observation is key. And if you can do a feature lead, that is also really, really impressive. Remember, without good reporting, you can't write a good story. Without good reporting, you cannot write a good story. No matter how good a writer you are, you can't make a great story out of shoddy reporting. There's no way to do it. I've tried. Because I'm a pretty good writer, but if I don't do good reporting, I can't write a great story. Okay, so just remember observation when you're doing your reporting, because it's real important, and it's going to make your stories better. The other thing is, when you have time, when you've got time and you're not on deadline, write a feature lead. It'll make the story more interesting, the reader will enjoy it, and you'll have a better time writing it. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you have questions, just shoot me an email or stop by my office hours. Thanks. Bye.